Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larbi.
Hey, welcome back. Thanks for joining me again on another episode of Where Should I Invest? I am Sarah Larbi. I'm excited to have you back again this week. Thank you for listening in and tuning in. Today's guest is Zeshan Choudhry, who is a real estate investor who owns about 40 plus units, started with single family properties, got into multifamilies, and has scaled quite quickly in Windsor, Ontario. Originally from Toronto, he's been actively investing since 2016. 2016, and in just a few short years, has amassed 40 plus units. Zeshan is super knowledgeable. We talk about self-managing. We talk about how to fill vacancies, tenant screening, and so many more things. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. And one of the things I will say is last week, I announced that I was retiring October 1st. And I just wanted to give you guys some more insights on that. I'm super excited, but for me, it was really important to leave the door open as much as possible. Granted, there's always a little bit of risk with COVID and what the aftermath looks like, but I think I'm in good shape to take the down that I think may be coming at some point. And if not, then that's fine too. No one has a crystal ball. But before you quit your job, just make sure that you've got your ducks in a row. Don't do it too fast. I know there's a lot of people that reach out to me and say, I want to quit, but it does take time. I mean, it took me 7 years. I'm not saying that you can't do it sooner, but it is a lot easier to get financing and to refinance when you still have a T4 income or some type of income coming in. So just really work closely with a mortgage broker and your team to ensure that you have a good transition plan. Second thing I would say is leave the door open. Don't leave on bad terms. I mean, with my boss, he and I had conversations about this probably a couple years within that time frame where I was letting him know, okay, I'm probably X amount of time off. It did happen a little bit faster than we thought, which is awesome. But I was always very upfront with him. And I will tell you also, it's really important to have a nice boss that trusts you or a good company that trusts you. And for you to also have integrity and trust that you are working while they pay you and not on your own stuff. So I think that also helped. I just made sure that, my after hours were spent on real estate, but I didn't interfere with during the day. When my company was paying me, I made sure that I was working for that company. And I'll tell you, being efficient and productive at what you do at your job allows you to be able to also move faster and scale up, make more money in your T4 income so that you can get more properties. So work with a good mortgage broker, and I'll tell you, have a transition plan and do it where you are not burning any bridges as much as possible, right? And, for me, it was important that the transition happened smoothly, that the person that's replacing me, he's my one of my best reps that I have. He's been around for 5+ years, definitely ready to take over my role. And so I just want to make sure that as much as possible, the company is left in good standing, in good shape. And, I'm sure they'll miss me and I'll miss them too, but it was important for me to transition out. Hence why the very, very long exit date, because when I gave them the information, I gave them about 3 months of notice. So I think, ultimately, they're going to be okay once I'm gone. They're going to have the information that they need, which was important. And you never know, maybe one day I'll come back as a consultant if they're like, hey, Sarah, do you want to go to Chicago for a week and do some training? And, 1 week is X pay. Potentially. I mean, depends if I'm in Costa Rica or depends if I'm, in town, whatnot. But it's always good to leave the door open because you never know what's going to happen in the future. So again, just plan. I'll tell you that it was a long time of planning, and it was definitely long conversations with my team on, okay, what do we need to do to get it set up? And refinance what you can if you are planning on leaving your job, because as soon as you don't have one, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. So definitely plan lots. But The other thing I would say is, guys, I'm going to do one more 3-month Burr course. These are 3 months long. It's a mix of Zoom and in-person field days. You could do one or the other. You could do Zoom only if you're not in the Southern Ontario area. But I'm going to do one more for the rest of the year. That starts in September. If you are interested in the Burr course, check out my website, sarahlarbi.com. Just go to the Burr section. For the in-field, there's going to be a maximum of 10 people. We don't want to make it too big so that it can be very hands-on. And it is also going to have Zoom classes. So more details on that. If you want to learn how I do my Burr strategy, everything that I use, meet my team, that is going to be a great option for you. So that starts in September, sarahlarbi.com for that information. But now let's talk to Zeshan and see how he's done as a real estate investor, and hope you guys enjoy the podcast. Hey, Zeshan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Very good. Very good. I'm excited to have you on. We met a little while back at a real estate investing event and have been connected on Instagram. And you've got some great things going for you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do when it comes to real estate investing.
So I'm an investor here in Windsor. I'm originally from Toronto. I recently moved down here kind of to take over the portfolio that I was building while I was working downtown Toronto. I specifically do multifamily properties. So I look for value add opportunities in, I would say, like 6 to 10 unit buildings and larger. So that's one of my main focus now. I also manage my own portfolio, and I do some property management for some other people from out of town as well. Just being from Toronto, there are a lot of people that, were interested when I started investing out here. So I'm just looking after their properties as well. Yeah,
so what does your portfolio consist of roughly? Like how many property units?
Yeah, it's about 40 units now. So I started with single family and then slowly started refinancing those and getting into the larger properties. So some single families, 6 unit, 7 unit, up to a 12 unit property here in Windsor. They're all in Windsor.
All right, very cool.
Yeah.
So multifamily is definitely very different than residential. And what are some of the biggest differences that a listener, somebody at home, might want to factor in when they're comparing the two?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with multifamily is just how they're valued, right? So they're valued like a business, right? They're all based on income. It's not really based on the comparables, right? So with that, you can kind of control and force your appreciation with that versus a single family home. You can add some renovations, but you won't really have accurate number of what that property is worth without looking at other properties. So the fact that it's valued on their cap rates, which is your revenue minus your expenses, you get your net operating income, and that's weighed against a cap rate. So with that, you can kind of see, you can add value just by decreasing expenses or just doing renovations and increasing rent. So with all that combined, you can I would say that's the biggest thing, just the valuation part. Another thing is what you can do with multifamily is that also you have occupancy is another big advantage. So let's say you have a 10 unit building. Let's say if six people stop paying rent, you're still going to be paying your mortgage, right? So you have all these tenants under one roof. It's one commercial insurance policy. It's one mortgage to deal with. It's not a number of different, like when I was doing single families, it's all these policies and mortgages to deal with. So that's another major thing with multifamily, and just tax wise as well. There's a lot more capital expenses that you could write off, and it helps you during tax season as well. And yes, and a lot of the larger multifamily is also off market, so you don't really have to compete with that many people. They're usually brought within a small network of owners and brokers, so you can kind of go direct to the seller and negotiate a little bit more than you could, I think, with the single families.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting because I teach a Burr class, and then the last class of it goes on for about 3 months, and we just did the last class this weekend. And we were talking about the cap rates, and sometimes you're burring multifamily properties. All you're doing is increasing your income potentially as renters come and go, and then decreasing your expenses, and then you can go back to the bank and refinance just based on that and the cap rate that you can add a lot of value with very minimal, if any, renovations at all, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Quite interesting. The financing is obviously different, how you qualify for the financing,
Mhm.
There's definitely like pros and cons to both. But I do want to ask you, so one of the biggest things I also believe in, and you mentioned it, is it's a lot of the property when it comes to multifamily and commercial, right? 5+ units,
Mhm.
your RBC. But when it comes to commercial, everything gets bought and sold really behind the scenes without hitting MLS. So how do you really become involved, and how do you get those properties in your, in your last, little, I don't know how many years you've been investing, but in your last little while, like how are you getting these properties under contract and finding them?
Yeah, so I started not too long ago in 2016, but I literally been using an agent here in the city that has been in the city for 30, 40 years, right? So he knows all these owners who have all these properties, paid off mortgages at this point. So a lot of the business he does is off market. Um, and then when you get to multifamily, the owners at this point, they don't want, you know, 6 to 10 people coming in, not serious, not firm buyers. So it's been mainly just networking, I guess, but that broker relationship, he's the one who has all these relationships with these owners for years and years. And I would say otherwise, it's pretty hard if you don't have those relationships. People do wholesale multifamily as well, so you could go to a wholesaler where there's owners in a distressed situation. But my last three deals have been all off market, and majority have been like the larger multifamily as well. So
Through a commercial real estate broker.
yeah, no, he actually does residential and commercial. Um, so some of these are mixed use buildings too, but yeah, he's just a residential and commercial. He does both. So it's more that he just knows the entire city. So it's been beneficial for that reason.
So they're local. That's
Yeah.
also pretty important.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
What about, because I always thought, like, if you have a portfolio and you're not managing that, or you're managing it, but you have a connection with a property manager,
Yeah,
is that another option? Like, are you seeing a lot of that on your?
yeah, there's that too. Like even inspectors, to be honest, like um I have a good relationship with a few inspectors here in the city, and um like sometimes they'll know these owners that have inspected buildings for many times, and they kind of pass along, okay, this guy's shopping his property around potentially. If you want to speak to him, we can connect you. But yeah, property managers as well. They're usually the first to know, right? If there's either like a distress situation or um, you know, they have a good relationship with the landlords as well. So that's always a good contact to have. And I manage my own properties now, but I used to use property management here, and they had all the contacts as well, like you said.
So you're managing 40 of your own units, plus obviously a bunch of
Yeah,
other investors. What
yeah,
are some of the processes and procedures that you've put in place?
yeah. So for my own portfolio, I use something called Buildium. I don't know if you heard of that. It's a property management software. It's it was based in the States. It was created for users in the States, but they brought on a lot of Canadian users, so they're starting to build on like we have obviously different rules, landlord tenant board, but a lot of the stuff is standard. Like we have a way that tenants can log in and pay their rent, submit maintenance requests, so that way I don't have to get all these phone calls, I don't have to get all these texts. They go to like a portal, and from there they can assign it to who they want to as well, right? So I'm on there, and so is my maintenance man. So I have my own maintenance man that I hired, and any maintenance items they know to assign it to him, right? Any like lease or payment issues, they can assign that to me or reach out to me. But I like for them to use the software as much as possible. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are not using that software just because like they're old school, right? They're not on the internet, and they're making cash payments, stuff like that. So there's a few of those, but with the students it's really easy. They all use that. That's one thing. Another thing, I do my own leasing as well. I do I use Zumper, which is kind of consolidates all those. You make one ad and it syndicates it out to a few different resources.
So Zumper, at Zumper.
Yeah, so that goes to, only thing it doesn't go to is Kijiji, but it hits like Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, PadMapper, Apartments.com, all that stuff. And that way it just gets it out to more people, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to fill a unit?
Well, here in Windsor, the vacancy is super low, right? Like, I mean, it's been a couple weeks at the maximum. I have a few units that I'm trying to get leased right now, and my email for the because I have a separate email for just listings, and it's just crazy. Like there's so much demand right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the things that you look for when you're screening tenants to make sure that you're not? Because you mentioned obviously in Ontario, like there's the
Yeah,
Ontario
exactly. Yeah.
rules and regulations, right? Or the Residential Tenancies Act and the Landlord Tenant Board is
Yeah.
always usually, well, not always, but favors the tenant. So, what are some things screening is so important that you do on your screening processes?
Yeah, I do have like a checklist that I do, but the main thing I look for is income. So a lot of people, sometimes have trouble providing that proof of income, but that's the major thing. Like it has to be, definitely well over half your rent has to be your income has to be like two or three times your rent, right? So I know it's tough in Windsor with some of the people here, but I do my best to look at the income and make sure I have proof of that. If they can't support it, then we need a guarantee. So that's another major thing I do. Credit check, background check, even like a social media check, right? So see what they're really living like on the social media sites. That's another big thing, and then always do like a reference check as well.
Awesome, awesome. So
Yeah.
with 40 plus units and I don't know how many you're managing, you've probably been to the LTB a few times.
Yeah, so I do have a paralegal that I send all the time. I don't want to bother with that hassle of that, but I send out all the notices, and then if I have to file, I file online, and then my paralegal handles anything in court. I just don't want to be involved with that process, so I've kind of kept myself away with any court hearings.
That's
But yeah,
actually really
definitely
smart. Like I literally even get my paralegal to do my forms. Like even
the
at
forms. Yeah,
11, like if they're moving out, I'm like, are you really going to be moving out? I'll send her to do it
yeah,
for like, I don't know, $80, whatnot. Like it's actually
hmm
saves me the drive of not having to go there. And it just looks more professional and more serious, right?
exactly. Yeah, it's better sometimes without the face-to-face interaction, right? You just the person behind the paper.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. So, how did you get started in real estate? Because you were in Toronto and you looked at
mhm.
Windsor and you're like, Windsor seems interesting. Other than the cheapness of it in comparison, was that
Yeah,
the reason, or were there other
it
reasons
was.
that attracted you to
Yeah, it was a combination of a couple things. Like at the time, when I had no real direction in my career, so I was working downtown Toronto at the time, and I was taking a bunch of entry-level jobs because I got graduated from with a finance degree, and then I was just bouncing around from job to job. But so I was looking for something to do, passive income on the side and start building that up, so I could eventually maybe do that. 'Cause I was more interested in business than just working on a job. So yeah, so I got looking at a bunch of different things like stocks and options. So I experimented with that, and finally it led me to real estate, where yeah, so I went to a networking meetup. There was one local in Markham. I'm sure you heard of the group. It's Real Property Investments with Monica Jazik.
Oh
I don't know if
yeah,
you heard of her. Yeah, so she's the one who got me started. She's the one who pitched me these three areas, and she gave me these three options, and she kind of gave me a quick presentation on it: Barrie, Hamilton, and Windsor. And at the time, I just had $15,000, and I was like, where can my $15,000 take me in these cities? And it was literally just in Windsor, because at the time, where single family homes were 70, 80K in 2016. And so that's why I chose Windsor initially. You're right, it was just the cheapest area for me to that I could afford, and the numbers made sense, right? Yeah.
absolutely. Well, that's interesting. And then
Mhm.
how did you end up moving from Toronto to Windsor?
Yeah, so I mean, I started buying a lot, like refinancing on my single family homes, and then I was about 20 odd units, and this is recently, just in the summer of in August 2019, and and I decided to just manage my portfolio because property management wasn't too great for me, wasn't working well, and I know I wanted to do this full time, and I kind of almost had to replace my income that I was getting from my job, because the cash flow here, even the single family homes that I bought, those were cash flowing like $500-600 a month, and then I just going to multifamily, and I knew that if I wanted to grow it and eventually do these burrs of these multifamilies, I had to be there, because I was literally taking advantage of all my work times, answering all the calls and all the lenders and mortgage brokers that I was speaking to. So I decided to just make that shift and spend some time to manage everything, create a system, and then eventually come back. So right now I'm living in one of my properties, kind of house hacking. It was a renovated property, so it's fine to live here for the time being and just spend the time growing the portfolio.
That's very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. So I want to just get an idea of like what your latest project or, one of your latest project looks like, in terms of price, in terms of NOI, the cap rates. Can you share some of that?
Yeah, sure. So the last property I bought was in December. It was a 12 unit building, and it was purchased for 1.2 million. Um, because this was direct to owner, was a relationship that my broker had, and he had it valued pretty much right on. I mean, it's a pretty stabilized property. It wasn't too high of the value add, but there is opportunity once you uncover it, right? It was valued at a 6.5 to 7 cap rate, and we were lucky to we negotiated a vendor take back of 150,000. So that really helps the down payment. So I had a JV partner, and we both, that we only ended up putting about 12% down on this property. We're going with commercial financing through a lender, and yeah, so in terms of the income and the opportunity, there is more on the expense side. So a lot of the units he's been renting as all inclusive. And so what we're gonna do is as they go vacant, then we're gonna start adding sub-metering it. So at least we can add the hydro and save some expenses there, and then also go in and start controlling the water by adding like low flow faucets or LED lighting all throughout. And just there was a lot of wasted, and they weren't being as efficient with their utilities. So that was the opportunity there. But other than that, like if you look at it, it's fairly stabilized. It's under rented a bit. Um, but to get into it, it's a great opportunity, especially with that vendor take back. There's enough room there for us to cash flow, for us to hold some money back for maintenance. So that's the latest project, and we're still going through that process right now of turning it over. But that's a long term hold for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I think to restabilize, like it takes, a couple years, could take more because you're really not able to, it's not like Texas where you're like, everybody out,
Yeah. Exactly.
or you're going to go in and raise the rents however you want. So it's definitely different. Like
Yeah.
you have limitations, right? Then you have to compare and see, okay, when was the last rent increase done? And you can only increase rent once a year. And then if your tenants have been there for 15 years, I mean, you can try cash for keys, but again,
Yeah.
right, if somebody's paying $400 and the average now is $1,200, they're not gonna say, sure, let me take your $3,000 and I'll go find something else.
Yeah. Exactly.
But
And
not always.
that's the thing, when you buy these large buildings, you inherit all these tenants, right? That's the one trade-off. Is it'd be nice to have some vacant units, but yeah, you do get some existing tenants that are way below market. But the good thing with that, like with the cash for keys, like you said, let's say you have to offer somebody $2,000 to leave, right? With multifamily, with commercial real estate, at least you can like estimate how much that would impact your value, right? So if $2,000 you paid out, but that's increasing your value once you increase the rents. Put that over 12 months against the cap rate, it could be like $50,000 in value that you just created by paying 2,000. So you can kind of plus your renovation, if you have to put that in, you can kind of calculate exactly what, if it's worth it or not, and more times it's worth it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so interesting because it's such a different way to calculate it. And,
Yeah.
you look at the market cap rate and then you look at, okay, is this going to give me a higher NOI of what? And then, and you compare that and you do the math, because if you're going to renovate a unit, but you're not going to be able to get any more rent than what you were paying before, maybe that's not the right way, right? Maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, the low flow stuff. I think those are great ideas. Or, I mean, when you've got multifamily, like there are probably lots of different things that you can do to increase the cash, right? So laundry,
Mhm. Yeah.
garages, sheds, storage units that you
Yeah.
rent out. What are some of the things outside the box that people might not think of ways that they could increase rents?
Yeah, storage is a big thing. Like if you have additional space down there, why not add storage lockers and get them to pay monthly as an add-on. Laundry, we do have the coin laundry. You can add another laundry unit if it's depending on how many tenants. I've seen people put in like vending machines um, for more income. In the States, I used to follow a lot of like these syndicators in the States. They're doing like all these pet fees and amenities for their pets, which
Which you
people
can do
just
in
pay.
Canada, and you
Yeah,
can't do pet fees.
you can't do anything pet fees, but like they had like these designated washing stations for pets, and people are just paying like crazy for that kind of stuff, right? So, but here, yeah, I think the main thing for income side, obviously renovate and increase rents, but then the storage, and if you can add a unit, if you go through that whole process with the city to rezone or add a unit. I'm doing that at one of my buildings. It was a commercial mixed use on the bottom, but we're converting it into 2 residential units. So that's another area you can, if you're able to add space and units, then that would be a big bump too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this? Because, here's a thought I had about how a lot of renters, one of their biggest possessions, other than family and this and that, like your material possession, is like this big screen TV, right? You go into, and I'm not like, hating on anybody, renters, not renters, but a lot of people, their biggest possession is their big screen TV. So what if you bought them a big screen TV, right? Like obviously not the ones that are at market rent, but the ones that are below market rent that have lived there forever. And you rent it back to them and you say, why if I buy you a big screen TV and we're going to, it's going to be $100 a month. Like maybe people would actually say that. Why not? Right? Like, what is it going to cost you? $600-$700? They're going to love it. And they're probably going to be willing to increase their rent. I don't know.
That's a great idea. I never even thought of that. It's like a payment plan that, you can build right into their lease, right? If it's a year lease, 12 installments of this, but obviously you want it to go forward. But that's a great idea.
Laundry, we're not thinking of the stuff that like they actually would really like. Like, I mean, not that they want laundry, but we're thinking like laundry, we're thinking garages, we're thinking storage, like sheds. Hey, let's add a TV. But if they move out, leave that TV in there. I don't know. Or if they stay for a certain amount of time, they own the TV, because you don't want them like leaving it like a month after. But I don't know. That's what I would do anyways.
especially with a large building, you can maybe get those TVs for like a wholesale price. You're getting like 12 TVs, and you can pass that on to the tenants. That's a great idea.
Awesome.
I use it.
Hey, you know what? It's I've given that idea away to a few people. We're gonna do it. One of my students just bought a 5-plex. So you know what? If the worst they say is no, and then potentially they're gonna get this really cool thing that they're gonna be all excited about. Okay, great. Let's move your rent from like, are you cool with paying an extra $100, $150? Like a lot of them might say yes. And if they'd say no, hey, whatever. Quick, easy way to like, especially with multifamily to increase the NOI. So
absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Any other tips that you do that you want to share with the investors, the listeners?
In terms of multifamily, any other tips? Let me see. I think one thing is like to actually consider the rent increases, because some people just don't even do the rent increases. But when you factor that in on a large multifamily, even that 2.2%, it makes a huge difference when you have like this entire building wasn't even they never did rent increases. So just by that, I was able to increase the income. And then the other thing is I have some commercial tenants too, right? It's a mixed use. So you can add the taxes, maintenance, insurance, on their leases too. So that's a way to get them to pay a portion of your water expense, your maintenance, your insurance, all that stuff. And because we have a on-site supervisor there as well, which I might bring in my own maintenance man eventually, but we pay for that, right? So you can pass that on to those commercial tenants. So I'd say just more. That's not really a tip, but it's more something you just shouldn't ignore. Those kind of costs,
absolutely. The triple net leases.
Yeah, the triple net leases. Yeah.
So it's a whole different ballgame when it comes to like commercial, right? Because commercial residential, like there's still people living there. It's their homes. The Residential Tenancies Act still obviously applies. But when it comes to commercial, like storefronts or doctor's offices or I don't know, pizza shops, I mean, like literally they don't pay. There's no landlord tenant board. It's like,
exactly, yeah,
business. So
and you can adjust those costs annually too, right? As your costs increase, you can adjust those costs on them too.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll sign a 5-year lease, and they have to pay it. So They will do a lot of renovations to, like, if they have, I don't know, whatever restaurant or like a little pizza shop or whatever it is, they'll renovate it so that it makes sense on their dime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they want to look after their business too, right? So they're going to be handling that stuff right away instead of waiting for you to respond and come out and handle all that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the next part of our podcast is our lightning round. So I'm going to ask you a series of 5 questions. You're going to give me the first thing that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite real estate investing book ever?
Yeah, it's a multifamily book. It's called Crushing It in Commercial Real Estate and Multifamily. Brian Murray.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Question number 2. What is your favorite podcast?
I listen to a bunch. I listen to yours, Right Club, but I'd probably say Bigger Pockets. I've probably listened to like almost every episode there.
Yeah, it is a great one. It's actually what got me as well into real estate investing.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Number 3, what do you do for fun when you're not doing anything real estate related? So favorite pastime.
Yeah, like I used to really be into sports, and especially basketball. That used to be one thing I used to do a lot. I haven't done it as much because it's been so busy, but that and travel as well, which I'm going to be getting back to this year. But yeah, besides real estate, which we all do enjoy too, right? So.
Very cool. So number 4, if you lost all of your money and your assets tomorrow, how would you start again?
Yeah, I mean, if I still had my knowledge, I would go directly right into multifamily, skip the single families, and find a good off-market opportunity and partner with someone who has the cash if I don't have any cash left.
All right, great advice. Number 5, if somebody has $50,000 and they wanted to get started, how would you recommend they spend it?
50,000, I'd probably put some towards education at first, just educate yourself, and the rest get into a value-add opportunity. It doesn't have to be multifamily. It could be a BRRRR, right? A BRRRR is, you have an opportunity to get majority of your money back. So maybe get into a single family or duplex BRRRR. You can even house hack it and BRRRR it that way. But the BRRRR would probably be the best strategy. And you can even go to a private lender and get them to fund you, right? You can keep a lot of your money in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. So thanks for playing the lightning round. So
thank you.
Zeshan, where can listeners find you if they wanted to reach out and know more?
Yeah, so I am starting to get a little more active on Instagram. So, you can follow me there. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, just my name, my full name. And then currently working. I used to have a blog, but I'm, reinventing my website. So that's going to be zcorecapital.com. So that's going to be live coming up soon as well. So you can see some of my updates and stuff like that there.
Amazing. Any final last words of advice for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, if whoever wants to get started in real estate is kind of thinking about it and hasn't taken action, I'd say just go right into it, right? You don't have to know everything. Obviously, some education is good, but it's kind of like I think all of us just learned by doing, right? So we all kind of got started that way and just take that leap. I mean, there's enough content online now with your stuff and all these Matt McKeever and everything else, YouTube, that you could learn a lot just by watching and seeing others do it. And then I would just say just make those offers and take action.
Make offers and take action.
Yeah,
that is the way to go. So thank you, Zeshan, for being on Where Should I Invest and sharing your insights and all of that information. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larbi. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest.